This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Well, it has been a frigid day across the province with temperatures dipping to -40 this morning in parts of Manitoba, but that did not stop people from getting outside to brave the cold on this Louis Riel day. The CBC's Gavin Axelrod shows us some of the different ways that people made the most of a very cold day.
The blistering cold couldn't stop these people from hitting the ice Monday. More than a dozen people from Winnipeg's Scottish community threw on their kilts and laced up at Assiniboine Park, part of the Great Canadian Kilt Skate, which started in Ottawa a decade ago. Winnipeg won the competition in 2021 and 2023, a point of pride given the temperature on this Louis Riel day.
What it says about Manitobans is we are a hearty group of people. We really are. We don't mind celebrating winter, and this is just one way of doing it. And this is just gives us a chance to spread a little Scottish culture, maybe a little Scottish heritage, if you will.
The skate is a family affair for Graham Jekyll Isaac. He's been bringing his son since he was 2 weeks old.
It's lots of fun to share with them and just remember our culture, the Scottish heritage, and just show we're strong Winnipeggers who can bear the cold and still skate in our kilt.
Earlier in the day at the Forks, it was a little quieter than usual, but a good chance for this former Winnipegger who now lives in Texas to reconnect with his roots.
For my sister's birthday, their tradition is go skate on the river, and then they have a backyard sauna. And then sometimes the nephews, they build an ice bath.
They're a long way from home, but no complaints about the weather.
I like it. Yeah, we don't see this cold in Houston, Texas.
None from this skater either.
This is part of who we are. We love hockey, we love skating. This is great family time for us.
And over at Festival du Voyageur, another chance to be immersed in culture.
Celebrating heritage, letting our little one speak her native language, French. It's always the time of year where we look forward to it, and we can't wait to get these capos on.
Time together is the best thing. We need more of it, for sure.
Back at Assiniboine Park, these brave skaters showing no matter the weather, it's never too cold to wear your kilt with pride. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
All right, that leads us to a first check on our forecast. Some brave souls there with the kilts, especially when you see -24 in Winnipeg at the moment. Brandon -26, Melita -25 at the moment. Thompson, Kenora both at -21 degrees. Feeling a touch colder with the wind chill out there, and we still have that extreme cold warning in place for Winnipeg, for much of the Red River Valley, into Westman, the Parkland, looking at wind chills below -40 once again overnight. Even colder than -45 in Westman, where we're looking at temperatures with the wind chill feeling closer to -50, which is frostbite on exposed skin in minutes. That's because we're looking at a low of -37 in Brandon tonight, -31 overnight tonight in Winnipeg. It gets better. I have more coming up in your full forecast in just a bit. Well, now to the latest on a story that has had a ripple effect on air travel right across this country today. A serious plane accident at Toronto's Pearson International Airport.
Toronto. We just landed. Our plane crashed.
This is moments after a Delta Airlines passenger jet flipped upside down while landing. The twin jet aircraft was flying in from Minneapolis with 80 passengers on board. Everyone has been accounted for, but 15 people were hurt. 3 of them, including a child, were taken to hospital with critical injuries. The crash prompted a full ground stop at Pearson, with planes destined for Toronto diverted to other airports for several hours, and delays right across the country, including here in Winnipeg.
Started in Vancouver, heading to Toronto. Flight was turned around back to Vancouver, rebooked to Winnipeg and then to Toronto, and now have been delayed once again in Winnipeg going to Toronto.
Plans are always changeable. It does cause a bit of a ripple effect into everything else that had to happen this week, but it's okay. I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Flights in and out of Toronto have now resumed. Winnipeg's airport suggests people check their flights before heading to the airport. Winnipeg police are investigating a double homicide in the North End. Officers were called to this house on Alfred Avenue near Aiken Street early Saturday morning for a report of a shooting. They found a man outside the home and a woman inside, both with injuries. They were taken to hospital but died. The woman has been identified as a 35-year-old from Swan Lake First Nation, while the man as a 33-year-old from Musqueam First Nation. Both were living in Winnipeg. Well, the war in Ukraine is taking center stage at two high-profile meetings overseas. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in Saudi Arabia for peace talks with Russia, but that has drawn criticism from Ukraine and European leaders who say they're being left out. And now they're holding their own discussions in Paris. And as CBC's Ian Fraser reports, some Ukrainians here at home are asking who's looking out for their country.
There's new hope the brutal invasion of Ukraine, started by Russian President Vladimir Putin, may finally end. But America's latest attempt to broker peace is a meeting Ukraine isn't invited to. Here in Winnipeg, there's frustration.
Talking about Ukraine, talking about its sovereign territory, what Ukraine may have to give up or concede to Putin, who has launched this invasion. Nobody is saying what Putin must give up or what he may concede in order for these talks to start.
Nick Kravitz has lost a cousin to the war, and he's taken relatives into his home. He isn't comforted by the U.S. and Russia meeting about the war.
There's a mood in Ukraine, there's a narrative in Ukraine that anything about us, without us, is unacceptable.
This is part of U.S. President Donald Trump's bid to end the nearly 3-year invasion. His defense secretary has said Ukraine may have to surrender some territory to Russia, but Kravitz says that's a non-starter.
What message does that send? That enables and emboldens every single autocrat around the world who's gung-ho about swallowing up its neighbors. And we have a neighbor right now who's using the same rhetoric in terms of annexing us.
Ukraine's president says he won't accept any outcome from negotiations his country isn't part of. Another Winnipegger of Ukrainian descent wants to give the new U.S. president a chance, but
engaging Russia at this point just gives them an opportunity to have a stronger position at the negotiating table, which concerns me. The aggressor, the bully, the terrorists should not be given an opportunity at the table when they just killed hundreds, thousands of people.
Denis Volkov still hopes the war will end soon, but says Ukraine must agree to the terms. Ian Fraser, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Penematang First Nation man says he feels like the RCMP dismissed his family's concerns by not searching for his loved ones after their home was gutted by fire. RCMP responded to the blaze on February 7th. Clifford Anderson says his family told RCMP that night that a man who was living in the home in the community was probably still inside, but he says an RCMP officer brushed off the concerns.
When we were standing there about 50 yards away, the heat was almost unbearable from the house. And here the RCMP member said that he looked around. And how can he look around like when that house was still burning?
Anderson says he found human remains in the rubble of the home before the RCMP did. For its part, the Mounties say local fire departments and the fire commissioner conduct searches, and that can't be done until a scene is deemed safe. Manitoba's Congolese community is calling for Canada to do more to help those impacted by violence gripping their country. This as rebel forces carried out one of the worst escalations of violence in a decades-long war. Santiago Arias Orozco reports.
Standing in solidarity half a world away, members of Manitoba's Congolese community decry the humanitarian crisis crumbling their homeland. They braved the frigid temperatures at a rally on Saturday, draping their country's flag and chanting in resistance.
We have to fight for people back home because people in Congo, they are like animals in the prison. They cannot cry. They've been crying, but nobody's listening.
Congo has been gripped by a war for the past 3 decades. Armed groups continue to vie for control over its territory. Millions have died since the 1990s. But in recent weeks, the conflict has seen one of its worst escalations in years.
It's like Congo is not a part of this planet, There's a huge violation of human rights.
Berkman Sassani's relatives have lived through the war for decades. Thousands have died and many others have been displaced since January as military groups, backed by neighboring Rwanda, seized major cities in Congo's east, including Goma, where Sassani's cousin was injured in a shooting.
So it's a very sad story. If I'm struggling standing here for minus 25, minus 27, it's because I feel like I have to do this for my hero people who are falling in Congo.
At the center of the conflict is the fight over resources, including coltan.
One of the rare minerals used in cell phones. So we, the Congolese people, we have to die so that the rest of the world can use the phone.
Foreign ministers from all G7 countries, including Canada, have condemned the recent offensive in Congo, urging all military forces to a ceasefire. But at the rally, participants want those words to be met with actions. They're urging Canada to send humanitarian aid to Congo. Santiago Arias Orozco, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Still ahead, Manitobans mark Flag Day in a big way in the midst of U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to our economy and sovereignty. That story. Plus, I'll have your full weather forecast coming up right after the break. Stay with us. All right, time for a full check on your forecast now. The best we did in Winnipeg, minus 23 today. Usually we should be at minus 7 for this time of the year. But there is some good news if you're not a fan of these really cold temperatures, as good as it is for things like the River Trail. There is a pretty substantial change on the way. How we get there, we'll start with where we started to understand how we get to that point. So this morning, starting below minus 40 in places like Roblin, minus 42 first thing this morning, minus 38 in Swan River, minus 37 in Brandon, Winnipeg this morning getting down to minus 31 first thing. Here's that big warm-up that's coming. So you can see that cold air over southern Manitoba, southern Saskatchewan. This is another very cold night ahead for us. But as that polar vortex, that polar jet stream swings back a little bit further north, some of that cold air just kind of sinks south. And in behind that, we have a pretty substantial change in our pattern. You can see the jet stream able to kind of shift a little bit further north as we get into the weekend. And this is going to fuel some of that warm Pacific air and some of that warm southerly air as it makes its way into the Prairie provinces. So this is going to move our temperatures back well above seasonal for this time of the year by the time we get to later in the week. Mostly sunny today. That's thanks to high pressure, and that's also what's going to keep us considerably colder as we get through the day Tuesday into Wednesday. So it just kind of stubbornly hangs on there. But as that moves out of the way and as we see that change in our pattern happening, we start to get a bit more cloud cover and a little bit more instability even as we get later into the weekend with some cloudier skies and maybe some precipitation on the way. Looking at our forecast temperatures first thing in the morning, boy, oh boy, plug in the car tonight because we're looking at another very cold start to the day for your Tuesday, minus 30 in Winnipeg by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, minus 36 first thing in the morning for Brandon, Melita, minus 38. Looking at temperatures in Saskatchewan up to as cold as minus 40. Feeling closer to minus 50 with the wind chill in Westman once again into the morning hours tomorrow. Winnipeg, the wind chill minus 42. Again, this is frostbite on exposed skin in minutes first thing in the morning. So we are looking at some very cold conditions persisting. Looking at the next few days, minus 21 is the best we do for your Tuesday. Mainly sunny skies through Wednesday and Thursday. And then that's when we start to get the wheels moving here on a bit of that warmer air moving in. Not quite seasonal, but getting closer to that. And there is some much warmer air in after this. I'll have that coming up in your 7-day forecast. Well, to a renewed push to show Canadian pride now, Saturday marked 60 years since the national maple leaf flag made its first appearance. It was an anniversary that reverberated loudly in the midst of U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to our economy and sovereignty. CBC's Felicia Adam has more on the long lines in Winnipeg for the red and white.
The line inside this community center wraps around the corner. The people in it all waiting to get a Canadian flag. Some getting there well ahead of time, making sure they would get one.
So I got here very early. I was one of the first in line, and here I got my flag.
Saturday marked Flag Day in Canada, the day also the 60th anniversary of the Canadian flag. And Winnipegger Patty Edmond made sure to collect.
You know, I have celebrated in the past, but for sure now it's even more important because of everything that's happening south of the border. It's very, very concerning.
I'm assuming you want the big one.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Some people like these ones.
The push to show off national pride has increased in recent weeks after U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to the Canadian economy and the country's sovereignty. Local politicians are also rallying Canadians around the flag. Mayor Scott Gillingham sharing his proudest moment being Canadian when his son enlisted in the armed forces.
Opening the front closet door and seeing his tunic, his jacket there with the maple leaf patch, the flag on the shoulder. I stood there, in the front entrance of our home, tears kind of like now, streaming down my face, just with great pride.
Councillor John Orlico organized the flag giveaway on Saturday. Every person got one flag, and with over 100 flags, they ran out in minutes.
There's not a lot left at this point.
Trump has, done some things to maybe break us apart, but it's just bringing us together, and that's fantastic.
And she's not alone. Ken Mutchison says he's never seen patriotism like this in Canada.
He created a big wave of unity across Canada. Everybody, even kids, the children in schools are taking it up.
The red maple leaf, a symbol of unity for those collecting flags. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
So you saw Canadian pride there, but Donald Trump's broadsides around tariffs and 51st statehood have also ignited anger and disgust among Canadians. But over Trump's shoulder, they've also noticed Elon Musk. And that has been creating a new lightning rod for some Canadian outrage, Musk's Teslas. The CBC's Sarah Levitt has the story.
I bought this before Elon went crazy.
Bob Porter loves his Tesla, but recently added a new accessory, a sticker clarifying his stance.
Emotions are running high, so of course people are looking at Tesla owners like we are all part of his club, and it's not true.
The club he's talking about is that of Elon Musk. The world's richest man owes much of his wealth to founding Tesla and SpaceX. But he's been in the news a lot lately for his prominent role in U.S. President Donald Trump's new administration, a role Musk started by making a hand gesture at Trump's inauguration, many said appeared to be a Nazi salute. Crowds of people opposed to Musk's politics protested outside Tesla dealerships across the U.S. over the weekend. There's also been vandalism, like outside this store in Vancouver, something police are investigating. Some Tesla owners, like singer Sheryl Crow, are waving goodbye to their cars entirely. There comes a time when you have to decide who you are willing to align with. So long, Tesla. Not everybody agrees.
Oh, hell yeah. You get a lot of attention, that's for sure.
Caesar Cerny is a proud owner of a Cybertruck and says he knows just how polarizing the vehicle can be, and even more so now. But he didn't buy it as a political statement.
I like technology. I work in tech. I support tech, and I think this is the future. So for me, the adoption was very simple. It's just an amazing car to drive.
At the Canadian International Auto Show, Tesla's showcase attracts both the curious and the hardcore fans.
I'm a huge Elon Musk fan, a huge Tesla fan, and that's changed my opinion not even one little bit.
He's such a modern thinker and stuff. I think he's got a lot of good to bring to the world.
Whether fans or not, Tesla drivers say they feel the hostility on the road, something unlikely to change in the current political climate. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Pope Francis remains in hospital and will require further hospitalization yet. In an update, doctors say they are changing his treatment and describe his illness as complex. The 88-year-old pontiff was admitted to hospital on Friday. He has been suffering from bronchitis for more than a week. Doctors say recent tests indicate Francis is suffering from a polymicrobial respiratory tract infection, meaning there is a mix of viruses, bacteria, fungi, or parasites in his lungs. But he's reportedly in good spirits and eating. Demonstrations were held across Israel, marking 500 days of captivity for the remaining hostages being held in Gaza, seized in the October 7th attacks. In Tel Aviv, protesters blocked a busy roadway. The 500-day mark comes amid persistent fears that the current ceasefire that's seen more than 20 hostages released could collapse. The demonstrators are urging Israel's government to protect and extend the ceasefire so more hostages can be freed. Well, coming up as we continue to power through this bitter cold snap, there are concerns about the impact it will have on our insect population. We'll bring you more on that. Plus, I'll have your 7-day forecast, which does have temperatures above zero in it. That and more when we come back. Well, as Manitoba gets ready for warmer temperatures later this week, a conservation scientist worries about the impact this weather will have on insects. She says the sudden rise in temperature out of this cold snap could affect some bugs that hibernate underground, including the Powashik skipperling, an endangered butterfly native to southern Manitoba.
When we have really, really warm days in the winter, all of that snow starts to melt. So then those insects that are hiding under the snow for the winter are now exposed. And then when the temperature drops again, well, now they're exposed to -20, -30, plus wind chill.
Eckert says while some insects might be able to survive the cold after a rise in temperatures, others will die. Having a look at our temperatures across the province tomorrow, another day very similar to today, at least across southern Manitoba, looking at -21 in Winnipeg, -23 in Brandon tomorrow afternoon. Mostly sunny skies thanks to high pressure that will not only keep our skies sunny, but very, very cold into the morning hours tomorrow. -19 in Swan River, -16 in Thompson and Gillam tomorrow afternoon as we start to see that polar jet rise and head a little bit further north as we get through the day on Tuesday. So -17 into the day on Wednesday for Winnipeg, -15 sunshine on the way for Thursday, and then comes the change, -7 for Friday, a chance of flurries in the afternoon, up to 0 by Sunday, and yes, that is a high of +2 under a mainly cloudy sky on the way for Monday. And to think we started the week at -23 today. Well, there may be no better time to move to Winnipeg than in the dead of winter. Well, maybe it depends who you ask, but the Assiniboine Park Zoo just welcomed 4 new residents. We introduce you to them in our Daily Lift. Okay, so the zoo's new group of 4 ring-tailed lemurs are starting to settle in. Rusty, Lasonia, Ruby, and Lily moved here from the Toronto Zoo. These curious, charismatic primates are native to Madagascar and spend about 40% of their time on the ground, in particular sunbathing. They are the latest in a string of new arrivals at the zoo, including red pandas, some red-crowned cranes, a horned owl, 4 marbled teals, and a domestic yak, who I am sure enjoy the weather oh so much. And that is our program for this Monday, for this Louis Riel Day. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow for a full hour of news at 6. Have a great night.